بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. We're in the sitting of Tuhfah al-Atfaal, and we have reached the chapter of Laam in al and Laam in verbs. And in this chapter the author is going to discuss some rules pertaining to the letter Laam as it is found in the particle al and the Laam which is generally found in verbs. So to begin, he mentions, or before we begin, we're going to mention what does al mean. So here the definite article al, in simple terms, this is something that is added to an ism, to a noun, to a word, to make it definite. To make that easy to understand, the author says, simply put, baytun, a house, al-baytu, the house. So in the second Arabic word we added al. So we have the word baytun and we added al, and we can see that the translation became the house. Clear? And there are two rules that can occur, or two rules that are in place with regards to the Laam in al, and they are izhar and idgham. And we have previously discussed the meaning of these two words in the science or in the topic of tajweed. So izhar is to pronounce the letter clearly, and idgham is to mix the letter that we're speaking about into the following letter, or into the letter that follows it. So the Laam in the particle al can either be pronounced clearly, it either has the ruling of being clear, so we can hear it, al, or it will not be pronounced clearly, it will be mixed into the following letter, so it will disappear, and this is called idgham. The Laam which is pronounced clearly can be referred to as al-qamariyah, and the Laam which is not pronounced clearly can be referred to as al-shamsiyah. So how does the author say, what does he say for us? He says, with regards to the first rule, the Laam in al has two rules that can arise. There are two rules that can occur. The first is izhar, if after it arrives. If after the Laam arrives one of 14 letters, know them through and through, from ibghi hajjaka wa khaf aqimahu. So if 14 letters, one of them come after the Laam in al, then the Laam will be pronounced clearly. Izhar will take place of the Laam. And the 14 letters can be found in the phrase ibghi hajjaka wa khaf aqimahu, i.e. each letter in this phrase is a letter of izhar for Laam in al, and the letters are hamza, ba, ghain, ha, jim, kaf, waw, kha, fa, ain, qaf, ya, mim, and ha. What will happen? What happens is that the Laam will be pronounced clearly. So if we think of a word that starts with one of these 14 letters, for example, the letter waw for the word walad, and you say al-walad. Can you hear the Laam? Al-walad. Yes, the Laam is clear. It is pronounced clearly because it is one of the 14 letters of izhar for the Laam in al. Another word, for example, al-khawf. The letter kha is one of the letters of izhar for Laam in al. Al-khawf. Can you hear the Laam clearly? Yes. So that's how it is pronounced. Moving on to the second rule of Laam in al, which there are only two rules. So it's the second, the other rule, as the author mentions it, the other rule is idgham, which is to mix the lam into the following letter. Idgham, which is to mix the lam into the following letter. When does it occur? If after the lam in al comes one of the following letters. And the author in this instance doesn't give us just a phrase. He does what he done with ikhfa in nun sakin and tanween, and he gives us a line or two lines of poetry, or a line of poetry composing of two halves, wherein each word starts with a letter from the letters of idgham of the lam in al. So he says, طب ثم صل رحما تفز ضف ذا نعم دع سوء ظن زر شريفا للكرم. So each of these words began with letter of idgham for lam in al. So letter ta, tha, sad, ra, ta, dad, ذال نون دال سين ظا زا sheen and lam. And these are also 14 letters. So the previous was with 14 and this is also with 14. What happens? The lam will be mixed into the letter which follows it. So for example, if we look at the first of these 14 letters is the letter ta. We think of a word with letter ta, talibun, student. If we put al in front of it to say the student, we say at-talibu. Can you hear the letter lam? At-talibu. No, we don't hear it. So the lam has been mixed into the following letters, which is a ta. And what you notice in the mushaf is that the lam in this case will have nothing on it, no sukoon or anything written on it, and the letter that follows it will have a shadda, at-talibu. Likewise, the word shams, the tashin is one of them, as in the word sharifan. You say shamsun, a sun, ash-shamsu, the sun. You don't hear the lam, ash-shamsu. طيب. Whereas in lam al, which has idhar, you see in the mushaf that there is a sukoon on top of it. And the lam in al, which does not have, which is idgham, which has the rule of idgham, you see that the lam has no marking on it, and the letter after it has a shadda. So those are the two rules that the author mentioned with regards to lam in al. It's either one or the other, there's no third. And then he finishes the last line of this chapter by mentioning a general rule, there are exceptions, but a general rule for lam in verbs. He says, the lam of af'al, of verbs, is generally to be pronounced clearly. Idhar will normally be pronounced. What happens? The lam is to be pronounced clearly without any mixing going on. And he gives examples. He says, for example, قُلْ نَعَمْ قُلْ نَعَمْ, Qaf with a dhamma, lam sukoon, قُلْ, and then noon comes after it, na'am, قُلْ نَعَمْ. Okay, can you hear the lam clearly? Yeah. قُلْ نَعَمْ. Okay, good. If that normally when the lam is followed by noon, it should be idgham in al. When you say an-nawm, right? But because it's a verb, we're going to pronounce it clearly. قُلْ نَعَمْ. Like a second example that he gives in the line of poetry, he says, قُلْنَا قُلْنَا, which means we said. قُل, kaf dhamma, qaf dhamma, lam sukoon, qul, noon fatha alif mad, na, قُلْنَا, we said. Here the lam is pronounced clearly because it is lam in a verb. Whereas we mentioned lam in al, if it is followed by a noon, it should be idgham. It should be go into the following letter. And then iltaqa, iltaqa. Here there's a lam, ilta. There's a ta that follows it. But because it's a verb, the lam will be pronounced clearly. Iltaqa. Whereas normally, if that lam was lam in al, then it would not be pronounced if after it comes the letter ta. Like for example, the word tawbah, tawbah. If you say at tawbah with the lam and al, alif lam, then we will not pronounce the ta because it's al. But when it's a verb, we do pronounce it, because the ruling for verbs is that you generally pronounce the lam sakin. Even when it has sukoon, you still pronounce it, generally speaking, except for one or two exceptions which the author himself doesn't mention. And if we go through the poem in Arabic, then we'll give more exhaustive details, insha'Allah ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the ability to be able to read the Quran in the way that it should be read, and follow and implement the rules and regulations that He has provided.